Okay, so the role of culture and arts in the times of crisis in international relations, I think it can be very powerful for three different reasons. It's something that culture is related to people approach, so it can be used as universal language, arts in particular, so that we can better understand parties in conflict. Then this further arts can be used to evoke empathy between people, which can then further evoke reconciliation efforts, and empathy has a huge impact and it's a huge factor of reconciliation between communities. And thirdly, it can raise awareness on human rights violation, which can then have huge impact in international relations, and by giving a voice to the people in conflict who are not being able to be heard, for example, through movies, through theater plays, different co-productions of the same arts. And today at CREDO, at the seminar, I spoke about how did we use bottom-up arts and cultural initiatives in reconciliation efforts between Kosovo and Serbia, and how it impacted how we enhanced cooperation between these two countries. And the challenge that we faced in the organization that I've been working in was that the biggest challenge was how to include people who don't think like we do, in terms of how to include more conservative right-wing people. So with this challenge in mind, I will be having the opportunity at CREDO to research this topic and to develop potentially some policy brief on it with other researchers here at the university.
So the role of cultural relations plays a valuable part in the kind of diplomatic toolkit in situations dealing with peace, conflict-affected countries and conflict within countries. So cultural relations helps explore shared values, it helps explore building connections between different communities and at people-to-people level. Cultural relations also helps to build trust between different communities and different people as well, and between countries. So it's part of that very valuable toolkit. So for example, some of the work we've been doing at the British Council around this is things such as our Cultural Protection Fund, which is our heritage protection work in countries which are conflict affected or affected by climate change, preserving heritage at risk. This also includes looking at social outcomes and economic outcomes linked to heritage preservation. But crucially, we take a cultural relations approach to this work where the needs and the context of the local communities and the local context are most important to applications to the fund. So it's not about British Council being prescriptive, it's about local need, local context, and helping to respond to those local challenges and needs that's been identified locally. Other projects we have in this kind of portfolio include work around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example, and around the UN SDGs around peace and prosperity and sustainable development. We've also got work that includes our work around gender and inclusion, such as working with Women in the World, for example, and a variety of festivals across South Asia and East Asia that we do, exploring issues around gender and inclusion. But as I say, the value of taking a cultural relations approach, it is a long-term approach, but it is based on co-creation, on mutuality, and addressing some of the most pressing needs that the world is facing at the moment.
Cultural diplomacy is often referred to as a means to prevent for conflicts from happening or to reconcile after a conflict has happened. In the case of Ukraine, which is where my project House of Europe is taking place, we're not talking about conflict, we're talking about a situation of war with genocidal elements. And here, cultural diplomacy, as we do it under the House of Europe program, the EU-funded House of Europe program, is forced to take a very basic and very elementary form, partly because the line between what is cultural practice and what is surviving really blurs. Some cultural actors die, others have to join the army or the territorial defense to defend their country and their beloved ones. Others are stripped of their infrastructure and their context and their opportunity of pursuing their projects and their visions. And then at the same time, others are actually in a position to pursue their projects and visions despite of the adverse circumstances. And the cultural diplomacy that a program like House of Europe, which has been on the ground in Ukraine for many years, which has built an extensive network among culture and civil society actors, the role that such a project can then take under such a situation must respond to this huge and broad and ever-changing variety of really ranging from surviving. We are, with all our opportunities as an international organization, also there to help Ukraine to survive and to help Ukrainians to survive and to defend themselves and ourselves against the Russian threat. And at the same time, obviously, that includes all of our more conventional work of making possible for people to meet cross-border, for people to engage into international, intercultural exchange, for people to do beautiful things, to do art projects, and to be creative minds, and to be dreamers. All that is happening in Ukraine at the moment, and we are trying to support all that.
I think in times of crisis, I would like to stress 4 different points. And the first is to do something that you do always, but especially in times of crisis, because it's important to bring to attention and again that human rights and cultural rights are binding agreements for the sake of our common humanity, and that they are a common aspiration for all sides. And the second I would like to stress is what you can do in times of crisis, especially analyze with diverse and intersectional groups the root causes of the conflict. And 2 other things that are also very important in times of crisis for international cultural license is to provide the spaces for dialogue-based dispute cultures, and also to provide shelter for the most vulnerable people, cultural activists, and vulnerable cultural goods and heritage. What I like a lot about CREDO, and I found this experience again very impressive, I think the purpose of CREDO is to teach and debate the difference of the concepts of cultural diplomacy in international cultural relations, and to train the next generation to navigate skillfully between and with these differences of these concepts, cultural diplomacy and international cultural relations.